Okay, was that trip really necessary? Now, Philippians 2 6 tells us who, Jesus, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself to becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. That's from the New American Standard Bible version. Okay, so apparently God found it necessary to leave his ideal home in heaven to descend to the earth. So the question that remains is, why did he choose to do this? What was his objective in taking this radical action? Let's imagine two possible conversations that might have taken place in this regard between the Godhead, particularly Yahweh the Father, and Yeshua the Son. Possibility number one, Yahweh. Oh my, how terrible it is. Those humans are making such a mess of things that, as a just God, we will have no choice but to send them all to an eternal punishment. It just breaks my heart that there doesn't appear to be any way out for them. Yeshua. Hey, what if I went to earth and lived among them as a sinless being? In my innocence, I could rightfully take their place in receiving the punishment they have earned for their poor decisions, and so they wouldn't have to suffer the consequences. Yahweh. Well, that would certainly satisfy justice, but do you really understand the price you would be paying just to leave heaven and live a life among them? Well, that may have been the way it turned out, but was that really the driving motive behind God's sojourn among his creation? Here's another possibility to consider. Yahweh, it just breaks my heart how little they know about who we are. They think that all we are doing is looking for ways to make their lives difficult, as if somehow it gives us pleasure to see them miserable, when nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, we created the Garden Eden just so they would have a perfect place suited to bringing them the joy and happiness we created them for. It wasn't my choice to have to banish them from it. That was the consequence of their own decisions. I used to walk in the garden with Adam in the cool of the day because I enjoyed his company, not so I could catch him doing something stupid. Yeshua. Yes, it is interesting how they completely misunderstand the directions that we have provided them to be able to have the kind of life they want and that we created them for. Instead of recognizing that they are just the principles for making those kinds of decisions that will bring them real and lasting happiness, they have perverted what we have given them into some kind of arbitrary rules that they mostly use to make themselves feel better about themselves by thinking because they keep them, they are somehow better than those who appear not to. Yahweh. I've done everything I could to communicate how much we love them. I have given them the book with the guidance for making the kinds of decisions that will bring them the happiness and the fulfilling life they desire. And we created them to live. Remember Hosea? How I had him marry that prostitute Gomer and have him pursue her despite her continuing to break their marriage vows, just to show our people how much we loved them despite their breaking the covenant relationship they have with us. But did they get it? No. They still think all we are about is rules and regulations and making their lives difficult. Yeshua. Perhaps if we actually lived among them, as both a human with whom they could identify, and as the divine being we actually are, they might come to see just where our heart is and the kind of relationship we want to have with them. Yahweh. Yes, that might work, but are you willing to leave our heavenly home to live among them? Yeshua. If I could think of another way, I'd say, let's do that. But as it is, I can't see any other way that has as much potential for making a difference in how they perceive us. Take, for example, when they would bring a woman caught in the act of adultery to me. Yahweh. Yes, but they would just want to trap you into saying something they can use against you. Yeshua. Be that as it may, it still provides a wonderful opportunity. There I would be, just sitting in the courtyard minding my own business, when that rabble would come in dragging something that ends up being a woman who they dump at my feet. And then their leader would self-righteously announce, "Teacher, this sinner has been caught in adultery, in the very act. Now the law Moses gave us commands such a woman be stoned to death. What then do you say?" Now I would forego asking the question, well, since adultery requires two people, where is the other person? Since they are all feeling so self-righteous, I would merely respond that he who is without sin should be the one to cast the first stone. Although I would be qualified, however, I will not cast a stone because our heart is one of mercy. After her accusers have all left because they realize that although their sins may be different, they are all still sinners too, I would tell her that I do not condemn her, either in effect telling her that she is still that perfect creation that we created her to be, that we intended her to be when we created her. I will also advise her to sin no more, not because I might not be around to save her the next time she's caught, or because that road will ultimately lead her to hell, rather because the choice she is making will not bring her the happiness she longs for and that we created her to enjoy. After all, how can having a relationship with such a man who's already committed himself to another ever bring her what she longs for? Even if he divorced his wife and married her, she would be miserable. Every time he was late coming home, she would be wondering who he was with. And when he would be telling her that he is through with her, just as he would have done with his present wife. That is just one such event that could provide the opportunity to demonstrate our love for our creation despite the poor choices they make. To let them know in a meaningful way that we are more interested in what they're going to do differently in the future rather than in the poor choices they've made in the past. My presence among them can reveal in a unique and powerful way our true heart towards them, so that by knowing and seeing me, they will have an opportunity to come to really understand who we are. So, what do you think? Yahweh, yes, perhaps seeing us in their lives that way will provide opportunity for them, the opportunity to really get to know and understand us. However, going to live among them is still a high price for you to pay, my son. That may be, Father, but I think it would be worth it once and for all for them to really know us in a way that makes a meaningful relationship with each of them possible for all eternity. It can also be an example they need to understand how to love and accept themselves and others. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for them to be able to really know us, the relationship we want with them, and that they can choose to live with us in that relationship. Yahweh. My son, although you make a good point, I do not like that plan. I can see that many of them will have a difficult time receiving your message, even though it comes from both of us. And they're going to persecute you to the point of being put to a horrible death. I'm not happy about that reality. But if you are going to insist, I suppose your death shouldn't be in vain. I will accept your sinless death in their place, as you suggested, so justice will be satisfied and they can be spared the eternal consequences of their poor choices. Yeshua. Yes, of course, I understand, Father. And not only will I take the suffering their choices deserve, but then they can also be spared the burden in their life of trying to make right the wrongs that so often result from their attempts to fix the problems their sin creates and free them to focus on what they are going to do differently. And that possibly could be why they came to Earth.